From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Carving out a new business when it comes to convenience.
And it's turned out to be a pretty successful venture for us.
How one cattle producer is making sure people have access to steak 24/7. What's going on with pork prices?
Dipping back below 80 bucks, back below the index price.
Has the market found a bottom yet? And too late to plant?
Prevent plant certainly does seem like an economical option for some of those farmers.
What some states are already facing as planting nears an end. That's right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan, coming to you from our studios here in Kansas City, filling in for Clinton Griffiths, who's on vacation. Well, time has now run out for some farmers who had hoped to plant corn this season. The final corn cutoff date for North Dakota, parts of northern Minnesota, and South Dakota passed last Thursday. Those states still dealing with high moisture from snowmelt. AgDay's Michelle Rook is here. Michelle, it looks like a lot of prevent plant for those states.
That's right. Prevent plant acres were pretty much inevitable up here in northern Corn Belt states like North Dakota. Farmers had already given up on planting spring wheat, and now that we're past those final planting dates for corn, you can add those acres to the total as well. And farmers are only days away from having to make that same decision on soybeans. With the drier week last week, some farmers in the northern Corn Belt just got started on corn planting prior to the final planting date. And now there's not a lot of incentive to continue.
The market just isn't suggesting us to do that. Where last year, the economics, the market kept rallying and you felt good to go plant some late soybeans in there. So I think for North Dakota and maybe Northeast South Dakota, corn acres will be down a little bit, some prevent plant, and we'll have to see come the 30th. And the weather is a big determinant too. If we get some more rains before the 10th of June, there's just less acres of both corn and soybeans.
USDA puts corn planting at 75% done in South Dakota, 80% in Minnesota, but just a little more than a third done in North Dakota. So there will be prevent plant. The question is how much?
When you look at soil moisture profile in North Dakota, you see a fairly large area, probably between Jamestown and Bismarck and Point South, that have had an awful lot of rainfall. And I know that's the area where progress is furthest behind. Given the fact that corn prices have fallen as far as they have, prevent plant certainly does seem like an economical option for some of those farmers. If I was to put an estimate on PP acres right now, I'd have to say it's going to probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 to 1 million.
However, the total prevent plant acres in North Dakota and surrounding states will still be less than 2022. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
In areas of Nebraska, it's a much different story. Randy Ermacher giving us a look at his ground near Hastings. He says if things don't change, the dryland crops will be done by the end of June, and he'll be very crouchy by the end of August irrigating. But take a look at the latest drought monitor. You can see almost all of Nebraska is in some sort of drought. That's despite some rain. You can see where Randy lives in the southeast part of the state. That's an area in extreme drought. Meteorologist Courtney Jorgensen joins us. Courtney, temperatures are expected to soar in the Midwest this week.
That's right, Tyne. It's going to be a very warm day, particularly over in the Midwest. Look at the highs for this afternoon. Chicago in those mid-80s, St. Louis at that 90-degree mark. You can see all those red tones, those temperatures in the 90s all across the Central Plains. It is going to be very warm, and even over in the southwestern portions of the country, you can see Phoenix near that 100-degree mark. We are certainly continuing this warming trend, and that's going to continue a bit longer, unfortunately. As we do take a look at our temperature outlook ahead, particularly in the north and into the northwest, we are going to be expecting those temperatures to be above normal, even well above normal. Further towards the southwest, we start to get a little bit cooler. Those temperatures will be below normal for the most part. As far as our precipitation outlook as well, the Great Lakes has certainly been dry, and unfortunately that is going to continue as well. We're still getting moisture off towards the west, and that will continue to be the case as well. I'll let you know what is going to be coming ahead, but first, look at this cool video. Alex Harrell sharing a video of a spray drone laying in fungicide and insecticide on some good-looking dryland corn in Georgia. It's still really neat to witness the changes in ag technology. I'll have the rest of that forecast coming up.
If you've been watching the markets lately, you know lean hog futures just can't seem to find a bottom. They hit new contract lows nearly every day last week. Slaughter numbers for the year have been running above 2022, especially with the recent sow liquidation. Plus, cash and pork cutouts have continued to underperform. Market experts say the market was struggling prior to Proposition 12 decision, but that seems to have broken the psychology of the market even more.
We've already had a demand problem before it, but Prop 12 really piled onto it here. So what we're seeing out of it is that you're going to see a lot more product get pushed into the United States overall because of this deal, and that kicks off July 2nd. So we've had in the short term here, June and July futures have taken that really tough, as you can see here, dipping back below 80 bucks, back below the index price.
Miner tells us lean hog prices are at levels that producers are in the red on profit margins, and so there may be even more liquidation ahead. And the government could be looking to buy 47 million pounds of cheese for local food banks as well as schools. And while one dairy analyst says they're still digging through the details of that proposal, they say this could be a game changer for demand and prices right now. The solicitation of cheese was posted on the government's website last week. Mike North of Ever Ag says the first part of the purchase had already happened and resulted in USDA buying nearly 2 million pounds of cheese. The next round, though, which is being solicited right now, that could be even bigger, which would boost demand as well as milk prices for producers.
And when you break it all down, they're looking for 47 million pounds of cheese. That's 1,900 truckloads of cheese to be delivered somewhere in that neighborhood, we believe, from about October out through next June. So if we go through the bidding process stage by stage and can fully realize that amount of cheese being sold to the government, that's a little bit of a game changer.
Now, North says the bidding process happens in multiple stages, which he describes as complicated and even convoluted at times. If it happens, though, he thinks the buying could start to put some value back into the fall months for cheese prices. But with more competition, he thinks it could ultimately support Class 3 milk prices as well. Two big facilities are planned that will turn ag waste into fuel. First, Delta Biofuel has announced it will build a renewable fuel facility in Louisiana. It will be located in the Iberia Parish. The plant will convert sugarcane waste into feedstock for low-emissions energy production. Louisiana produced more than 2 million tons of sugarcane last year. It's hoped the plant will churn out 340,000 tons of biomass fuel pellets each year. It's expected the $100 million facility will create 126 new jobs. Officials plan to break ground this month. And then a new use for corn residue. Dow and New Energy Blue have announced an agreement to make renewable plastic from corn stover. Under the deal, the two companies will aid in the design of New Energy Freedom. It's a new Iowa facility going in near Mason City. Once built, it will process the corn stalks and leaves and turn them into things like ethanol. Almost half of the ethanol produced will then be converted into bio-based ethylene feedstock for Dow's products. Well, grains managed to make some gains ahead of the holiday weekend. We'll have a look ahead as the markets finish out May. And later, what do you do if you have a hankering for a steak in the middle of the night? How one producer is making sure you have the option of getting your hands on one that's in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by Lamar's Toy Store, the largest and most diversified farm toy store in the U.S. They have new and old and do restorations and customizations too. You need to see it to believe it. Visit lamarstoystore.com or call us at 712-546-4305.
One of the largest grain traders reportedly may merge with a rival. Reuters reports Viterra is in talks to merge with Bunge, but a source told Reuters there is still no certainty that the two companies will be able to reach an agreement. Bunge was the largest corn and soy exporter from Brazil last year. At the same time, Viterra was the third largest corn exporter and number 7 soybean shipper. Viterra is part owned by mining and trading giant Glencore. Well, corn and soybeans and some wheat all managed to go into the holiday weekend with some gains. Michelle Rook is back with more on what we'll be watching this week in Markets Now.
We wrapped up last week with higher grain closes for Friday and for the week. Tommy Grasaffi is joining us. And Tommy, putting some weather premium in last week, where we go from here really is all dependent on what the weather continues to do, right?
Yeah, there was no doubt when we hit that lower print 491, I believe is how low D's corn went. Call it 495. That wow, did we take all that weather premium out and we put it back in this week? We put it back in a big way. Now, I'm positive that a lot of acres got planted and a lot of people are done planting, but it's hot and dry across the Midwest. And so there's two schools of thought, Michelle. If you're ever going to have a drought, to have it dry for a few weeks after you plant it, it's a great time. Let that corn plant root down. I know people need a rain and they need their soybeans to germinate and everything else, but we can handle, no crop's ever been ruined in the month of May. But boy, hot Junes, hot Julys, we are full blown getting ready for weather market season. The only thing I see a big problem with, and you talk to people all day long, demand is a problem for corn, beans, and wheat. And that's what's going to come back to haunt us, Michelle.
So we are up into some chart resistance areas in the old crop corn. Let's talk about that. The inverses have been working. So do old crop bushels get eventually turned into new crop?
That is possible, right? So say we go that local elevators keep that front month, July, for another 3-4 weeks. What if they pull it a few weeks earlier? I've seen in years when we're in an inverse, when magically ethanol plants, end users, elevators, they all take a few days off, a couple weeks off, and say we're going to retool, we're going to close for a little bit. It's just too hard to buy bushels, and then boom, the very bushel they could be buying is a bushel $1 lower. There are folks out there going to watch this video, and somehow, because they're busy planting, they're busy spraying, they're busy replanting something, or they had a graduation, they're going to turn old crop bushels into new crop. So I think this rally, Michelle, was the gift we needed in corn to get any old crop moved.
Let's hope some farmers took advantage of it. Thanks so much for joining us. Tommy Grisapi with Advanced Trading, and we'll have more AgDay coming up.
Interested in spending a day with a trader? Call Tommy Grisafi at 800-664-4383.
That heat continues for the northern half of the country as we head throughout the week. We're going to be cooler off towards the southwest, but nonetheless, we've been dry, especially in those Great Lakes, and that will be continuing as well, too. Take a look at these temperature forecasts for the afternoon today. It's going to be quite warm. Chicago in those mid-80s, St. Louis in the 90s, and even towards the southwestern portions of the country, those temperatures near 100 degrees. Very warm all across the nation, as you can see. Those warm temperatures, in addition to a lack of rainfall for many areas across the nation, are starting to have some of those effects. Now, as far as precipitation forecast for the week, the central portions of the country looks like we will get some, but not nearly as much as we could use. We're looking at the potential of Texas getting up to around 1 inch in most areas to the northern portions of Texas. Now, as we take a look at that drought monitor, you can see especially just north of Texas, that's where that rain is really needed. With those drought monitor conditions, looking at extreme to even exceptional drought at this time. Now, over towards Florida as well, also looking at extreme conditions, especially on that west coast out there. As we take a look at our precipitation outlook for the week ahead, still that dry trend for the Great Lakes. That ridging pattern has held on. We get wetter as we head on the west coast. Taking a look at the jet stream also, you can see that ridging just continuing in place. We have this blocking pattern, really isn't allowing a lot of moisture to move into the Great Lakes, but over towards the southwest, that's where we have been seeing the rain held off from moving further towards the east, and that's just going to be a continuing pattern. So as we head into the rest of the week, high pressure is still going to dominate the east side of the country. Those rain showers still through the central part. Let's take a look at the select cities. Mostly cloudy skies for Harrison, Arkansas, high 86 degrees. Then as we head over to Pineville, West Virginia, partly cloudy, high of 80. And Crawfordsville, Indiana, in the upper 80s.
Variety is the spice of life, and as Machinery Pete tells us, there's been a lot of it recently in the used equipment market.
Well, folks, one of the joys of compiling auction sale prices and covering the auction market these last 33 plus years is just the sheer variety of type of sales with different types of equipment. And I had to smile recently at a pair of auctions in my home state of Minnesota about a week and a half ago. So on May 19th in Verndale, Minnesota, great folks at Mid-American Auction Company had a sale with these two vintage combines. Fun to see these. You don't see them around that much anymore. But a 1971 John Deere 3300 combine with a 2-row corn head sold for $4,000. And right next to it, the 1980 Gleaner F2 with a 5-belt pickup head went for $3,750. Now the next day, May 20th, over in Cambridge, Minnesota, my good friend John Carlson with John R. Carlson Auction Company had a sale for Walter E. Olson and Sons Excavating. And I tell you, the heavy equipment on this sale, a lot of it was one-owner, lower-hour stuff, and they set a pair of record-high auction prices. One was on this Deere 544H wheel loader, 3,817 hours on it. It was a one-owner rig, and I've talked about a lot the last 2 years how good used wheel loaders have been hot, and this thing sold for $82,775, just over $1,500 above the previous record high price. And they set another record on this skid steer, this Bobcat 773 on tracks, 1,946 hours on it, sharp rig, and it went for $29,700, and that was a record high auction sale price on a Bobcat 773 by $2,200.
Thank you, Greg. Well, a lot of grills were going over the holiday weekend, and that probably meant a few quick trips to the store for some meat. But what if you could get your favorite cuts from a vending machine? How one young cattle producer is turning that idea into a reality. That's in the country next.
In the Country on Ag Day is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, just ask any kid. There's just something exciting about getting a treat out of a vending machine. And one cattle producer is taking that to a new level. I got to see this great idea in action in Missouri. Nestled along the rolling hills of western Missouri is where you'll find Tim Hare.
I'm the 5th generation of my family to take this on.
A 5th generation farmer of what's now a 1st generation business.
Greengrass Cattle Company started 2 years ago. We first started out, we were just selling sides of beef. We didn't have a retail store. We had a small online presence, but we didn't have an e-commerce site or anything.
But when the COVID pandemic hit, demand was on fire, and the Hares knew it was time to dish out something new.
We looked at that as an opportunity to start processing cattle at a USDA facility and then selling individual cuts of beef as well.
And so they did, opening up this storefront in Weston in September of 2021. It was a way for the family to connect with consumers and share the story behind the beef.
I think it's really important, and I think consumers care about it too. You know, the types of questions that we will get are often very detailed.
Differentiating their business has become Greengrass Cattle Company's specialty.
Last year, I had a buddy of mine that moved to Germany, and I was talking to him one evening, and he goes, "Man, you're not going to believe this, but I get my bratwurst out of a vending machine that's 2 blocks away from me."
And with that, Tim had an idea: create their own vending machine full of meat.
I researched the different machines that were available. How could I make this work to sell not just bratwurst and ground beef, but steaks even? And I finally found a machine that I liked, that I thought would work and accommodate our needs.
It wasn't just finding the right setup, but also the right location.
Keith Bradley at Made in KC, he really believed in our idea. He's really supported us through this whole venture. And they've got a lot of runway. I think they have close to 15 stores in Kansas City.
That idea is a reality today, located inside Front Range Coffee House in the middle of Kansas City, which is 40 miles from their farm.
It's just kind of taken off, and it's been wildly successful.
An automated vending machine that even allows Tim to constantly collect data.
In working with the distributor that sells the machines, we were able to find a card reader that actually provides a lot of telematics in real time.
Out of all the aggregated data, the most telling point may be how people will buy steak at any hour of the day.
I didn't know if the machine was going to be successful to start with. When people were buying steaks that late at night, it just kind of validated all the assumptions that I had.
The reviews of Greengrass Cattle Company tell the story best. They've carved out convenience while attracting a loyal customer base across the entire Kansas City area.
We're not just trying to provide locally raised beef to consumers. We also have an obligation now to educate them and make more of a connection with where our food comes from.
Whether it's buying a steak from this vending machine or visiting the family's feed store they just acquired earlier this year, The Hares have not only carved out convenience, but also a niche. The family also donates thousands of pounds of hamburger to some local food programs, especially ones for kids. Just a great family. All right, that's all the time we have this morning. Thank you for watching. For all of us at AgDay, I'm Tyne Morgan. Have a great day.